Welcome to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Del challenges the status quo, questions everything, and empowers you to return to your core beliefs to make your life better. If you're ready to hear the truth and get your roadmap to the lifestyle you really want, the next hour will change your life. And now, your host, self-made millionaire, national award-winning investor of the year, CEO and founder of Lifestyles Unlimited, Del Walmsley.
Welcome to the Del Walmsley Radio Show, where the hype ends and the help begins. Today is Tell Del Tuesday, and with me here today is Geoff Ziegler out of San Antonio. Geoff, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Geoff has got two lead deals where he is the lead syndicator, 140 units, got two passive deals for 291 units. He's also got two houses left over from about 10 that he owned. And he's also won the 2019 San Antonio Apartment Association IRO of the Year, which is Independent Real Estate Owner of the Year. And he's a runner-up in 2020 for the Texas Apartment Association Independent Owner of the Year. And in 2021, he was a finalist again in the IRO of the Year. So we've got a lot of background here, and let's go ahead and talk about you being a construction guy for years. It's very interesting to me. I'm going around and around with people right now that want to do construction, is that if you're born with a hammer in your hand, everything in life looks like a nail. Ever heard that saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're a construction guy, so everything in real estate must have looked like an opportunity to build something. Tell us about it.
Yeah, and it all started with when we were buying single family houses. We wanted the ugliest of the ugly. The first deal that we bought was, I say this in air quotes, a rent-ready property. And it turns out that's the property that I hated the most. We weren't able to make it what we wanted it to during our renovation process. The other 9 houses that we subsequently bought, we bought where they were, foundation damages, roofs, interior. I mean, we had to do, each one of the houses was a renovation project. And those were the ones that you can, from my standpoint, can take a pride of ownership in, and that transferred through to the 2 apartment complexes, the apartment communities that we own now. They were fixer-uppers. They were dogs. They needed a lot of love. The first one we bought back in 2018 was a 1978 build, and the interiors were from 1978. They hadn't touched them in 40 years, and so that's how the construction transfers over to being a real estate investor for me. We look for the deals that need the rehab. I like the project work that goes along with owning the properties.
That's interesting because I'm just figuring this out right now. 40-year-old property. And in Houston and Dallas, especially in Dallas, they tear down anything that's 30 years old. They just tear it down. Yeah. And so you're buying stuff that's 40 years old and renovating it. I started during the era when 70s construction was actually a class B minus C type stuff. And so that's what I bought for years was that 78. And I know that there are all kinds of things that are different about why I wanted to get out of 78 construction in the very beginning. Do you have flat roofs on these things?
Yeah, the first one, the 78 construction has flat roofs.
How about mansards? You ever heard of mansards?
I've seen mansard roofs, yes, and I think, well, those are special.
Oh man, I remember taking and buying paint that was like oil-based and thick, and should have probably been thinned out, but we sprayed it onto the mansard so that the shingles would be actually glued back together so they wouldn't fall off the side of the building.
Yeah, so they wouldn't fall off. Yep.
Exactly. Isn't that bizarre? I mean, you knew what I'm talking about. But that's the kind of stuff people did back then. And so when you get one of these things, you got to realize 40-year-old appliance is probably yellow or green or brown or,
Yeah, Teresa Harrell, our operations consultant in Central Texas, came out and visited me at that property. It's out in Hondo, Texas, which is about an hour west of San Antonio. It's a little town. And that's probably why they haven't torn it down, because they don't have any housing out there. But she came out and took a picture of me removing the last harvest gold range that we had on the property. And she's like, I have to take a picture of this because nobody will believe me that these still exist.
Man, I'm telling you.
So in 2019, we're pulling gold, harvest gold appliances out of a unit and renovating and updating. And you know what? The residents out there were beside themselves when they saw what we had finished off.
You can't even imagine it unless you've done it. Because I used to give a seminar, and I'd talk about baby poop brown and apple green, and we'd mix them all together because people back then, when they did real estate, nobody did it like we do it at Lifestyles, where everything's got to be right. What they did back then was they would buy whatever they could find at the used appliance place. So you'd have a green stove and a yellow refrigerator mixed in the same kitchen.
Sir.
It's crazy stuff.
Yes, sir. So
you got out of your system. You were able to do a lot of renovation, really brought in what you said, and I like the term you used, that pride of ownership. Tell us how the deal worked as you went into it. After you did the real renovation, did you increase the rents? Did you change the clientele? How did it work?
Yeah, so the property, when we first took it over, had a lot of unique amenities like on-site drug sales, on-site pharmaceutical sales and things like that. The previous owner had filled in the pool, which was the one nice thing that they had. So we had to get creative with how to do that. The property was pretty rough. The resident profile was, we'll call it, less than desirable. But when we went in and started renovating the units, all of a sudden we saw the dynamic of applicants change from people that were just looking for the lowest cost, cheapest place to live to, hey, I want to give this place a shot again because it looks really nice. And that we see this now as a place where we could, bring our families and start a life with kids and stuff. And so through that, we were able to increase rents. We've made the deal hugely profitable. We at 20 months of ownership, we'd put a refinance on it through Freddie Mac, and we were able to pull about 65% of our original investment out of the deal. And by the end of this year, which will be we're into our third year of ownership now. At the end of this year, we will have 95 to 100% of our original investment back out of the deal and still own it, cash flowing double digits.
Wow, that's great. You know what I've always been amazed at that you bring up here, and don't want to put words in your mouth, that's unsanitary during COVID, but the thing that gets me is how the neighborhood figures out that the place has changed. It gets around. Yeah. I mean, even if you don't advertise it, it gets around that you've got a different product, a different owner. And I remember putting signs up under new ownership, but seeing that it went from this kind of a slumlord to that kind of slumlord to that kind of slumlord, and they always put up the new sign, new owners out there. But when you really start making the changes, people figure it out.
The good thing about buying, our second property we bought is in San Antonio, and that's a whole different dynamic. But what I found about Hondo or the small communities, the tertiary markets like that, is the marketing budget. You don't have to market much because it's all word of mouth. And when one person sees it, what we did is while we were renovating the units, we'd leave the doors open and we'd let the residents walk around and poke their heads in and see what we're doing and see what we're changing. And then all of a sudden the resident referrals and the internal transfers started happening. And we had budgeted to renovate probably about 24 units this year, which is half the property. Ended up renovating 40 of the 48 units in the first year because as soon as we finished one, we had somebody that wanted to transfer or somebody new that wanted to move in or whatever. And so we were able to turn the units on a much more rapid pace than what we had expected initially. And that accelerated our business plan in a good way. And I don't know, it just kind of took off like wildfire.
Now, I'm going to share something with you. Normally, and this is 30 years experience of 50,000 clients at Lifestyles. Normally, when that happens and you start accelerating your rehab process, people run out of cash because you brought in the money to rehab 24 of them. We'll be right back with Geoff Ziegler and the Del Walmsley Radio Show.
Now, from the files of Del Walmsley.
Guy came up and said, man, I went up and I listened to your podcast. He said, man, it's really interesting. I'm thinking about doing it. And that really was interesting to me that just an infrequent conversation to somebody at a bar could start someone's mind to thinking about retirement. That was a big leadership training meeting they were at, and yet some guy really was willing to come up and say, hey, I really would like to retire. And the point I'm getting to, it's kind of struck me because I really didn't anticipate this conversation. How many of you out there right now really would like to retire and just don't even know that you would like to retire? How many of you have any idea what the possibilities are in life? And I would suggest to you that my excursion over this last 5 or 6 days has proved to me that almost nobody understands nobody that isn't a Lifestyles member, that isn't watching other people doing it and seeing it done, and people retiring in 2 to 3 years or less. And so when you propose that concept to a person, the guy's 40 years old, he's in the apex of his career, he's peaking in his company, it just doesn't even click because they're still thinking about climbing to the top of the mountain. So you see that the people out there just don't really even have any understanding that there is a possibility to retire in 2 or 3 years. We'll be right back with the Del Walmsley Radio Show. The Del Walmsley Radio Show with me here today on Tell Del Tuesday is Geoff Ziegler out of San Antonio, and we're talking about his first renovation as a lead investor, which you would know it as a syndicator. His first renovation, and we went to break, I was bringing up a point that he made the point that he had an accelerated renovation schedule because people were really demanding the upgraded units. And the point I was making as we went to break, Geoff, was that I've seen that happen to people where then they spend all of their renovation capital right away and they start eating into their operating capital to do the rest of the renovations and end up becoming in a cash tight situation to where they become problematic. How did you avoid that?
Well, I've seen that happen, and the good thing is we've got mentors and other owners as a part of our Lifestyles community that can help you on the front end while you're underwriting the project. And we had actually underwritten to renovate all of the units. We'd underwritten the deal to renovate all 48 units. It just so happened that we ended up doing it a little faster than we thought we were going to. So the way I run my business, I keep everything separate. You've got your renovation money over here, you keep your operations money over here, and there's a Chinese wall between the two of them, and you don't mix funds. And that's advice that we've gotten from mentors. That's advice that we've gotten from other successful owners. You got to keep your investors, and quite honestly, I'm my largest investor anyway. So you got to keep everything like that on the forefront. You don't want to do the wrong thing and then end up in a pickle, and you left all your investors short on what you had promised them. And when I give people a promise in our PPMs and our offerings, I stand by those words and those numbers. So you just have to be careful and watch.
That's great. I'm very happy to hear that you had it planned all along. You just did it faster than you thought you could get it done. So that's great. That's what I like to hear. Let's talk about the next deal. What was the nature of the second deal you did in 2021, the 92 units? So you went from 48 up to 92. You doubled the size. What were your thought process in the second deal?
Well, this is a property that we had looked at in early 2020, right before COVID really shut the world down. And I like the location. It's right by the medical center in San Antonio. It's fronts on a really busy, active street. It's right next door to a huge property, and everything about it just kind of plays well. The interiors were not bad, but they still needed some touch, to make it ours. And we actually had submitted an LOI in February of 2020, and then the credit markets went kind of wonky, and so we backed away. The owners pulled it off the market, and we just agreed to not go forward with anything. And then about a year later, March or April of 21, the broker called me and said, "Hey, we're going to go back on the market." And lo and behold, they came back on the market at almost $1 million less than they were marketing it the year before.
Wow.
The financials had suffered a little bit because of some mismanagement, but it was still a deal that needed to be done because the upside that we're going to see in years 2 and 3 on this property are going to be pretty phenomenal.
Now, what year build was this?
This is a 75 build, so we have some of the dreaded, aluminum wiring and things like that. But that going in because of the due diligence that the way Lifestyles teaches you to do the due diligence is you bring in a team and you go through every unit. You know this. I mean, you go through every unit, you bring contractors in, you look, and you plan for and you budget for the capital expenditures that are going to need to come up.
So as a construction guy, I got to ask you this question. This is for my own edification here.
Okay.
Is we used to be able to pigtail with the aluminum wiring. Then they said we couldn't pigtail anymore. We had to Kolar. What are they doing now? How are they dealing with aluminum wiring nowadays?
It's pretty much Kolar, and then there's also, I can't remember off the top of my head, there's another, you buy them, they're little purple wire nuts that you can create pigtail for fixtures and things like that. And it's got the little putty stuff inside of it that's supposed to keep the connection between the copper and the aluminum from corroding and that. So it's still Kolar. They require Kolar plugs and switches and all of that, which are 3 times more expensive than the regular ones. But you know that going in, you budget for it, you plan for it, and it doesn't catch you out of left field.
How about the electrical boxes? That's another thing we ran into in that era. There was you couldn't replace the electrical breakers. They no longer would allow you to use the ones that they had at that time.
Right.
They weren't upgraded.
The good thing is, this wasn't built with the stab lock breaker system or I can't remember the other one. It's Standard Pacific, I think. Mm-hmm. This one had GE boxes. So we knew the boxes and the breaker systems. That was all good. But they just happened to use aluminum wiring in the construction, which, in and of itself isn't the end of the world. I know everybody hears aluminum wiring and they get worried about it. But as long as you when you're doing your upgrades, when you're changing things out, you do it right and you do it up to new code, then you're fine.
So, Geoff, how old are you?
I am 39.
Okay, so you might not even know this fact. You know why there's aluminum wiring in houses instead of copper?
It was a cost factor because copper went sky high and they needed it for
Vietnam. It was Vietnam. They needed the copper to make bullets and shells and casings and stuff for Vietnam. And that's why they started going to aluminum. So it's crazy stuff. How did you do on the second one now? This has been in play now since, what's the date on this one? 2021?
So we're 7 months. Yeah, we're 7 months into the deal. And we'll start our first round of distributions at the end of this quarter. So coming up March, April timeframe, we'll start distributing. If you look at it just on paper and take our NOI and the cap rate that we bought it at, we've added about $1.5 million, $1.75 million worth of value.
So what's the cap rate out in the middle of nowhere like? Well, no, this one's in San Antonio.
Well, this property's in San Antonio. What we underwrote it at for our side was a 5 cap. But everything around here is selling for,
I would say that's very conservative.
3 and 3.5 cap. I underwrote a deal last week. They were trying to sell a 1960s vintage property for a 2.5 cap.
Yeah, I had a deal I tried to buy a week ago. I got the best and final, and they had listed it at a 3.8 cap. And I said, okay, I'll pay you the 3.8. And I went in, I got on the best and final, and I said, okay, before I make another bid, let me know this. Is there anybody else out there that's even going beyond me, or am I just bidding against myself? He goes, Del, it's already $4 million more than your bid. I said, you know what? I don't need that property that bad.
Well, and that's what we did. This was a 2-property portfolio, and we went with the broker's guidance on pricing.
Hold that story because we got to go to a break. They're going to knock us off and you're going to miss your story, okay? We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back with Geoff Ziegler and the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Welcome back to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Today is Tell Del Tuesday, and with me here is Geoff out of San Antonio, and we're talking about his second deal, and I cut him off with a little bit of an advertisement, so go ahead and finish up your story.
That's all right. I was just saying, we were looking at a 2-property portfolio here in San Antonio, and by the time we got our LOI in at the price guidance from the broker, the counter was already $1 million more just in a matter of a day. So if you find a deal, you got to jump on it now and go hard or go home because there's a lot of buyers out there.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because people ask me this all the time. Del, you're very conservative, so you're always talking about, maybe the prices are too high, you got to be careful, and yet I'm still buying real estate. So for everybody else. So it's a hard thing to figure out that you have something you can make profit with, even though the prices have gotten very, very high.
Exactly.
Let's shift directions for a second because I think you've done a good job on talking about your deals. Very profitable. Why did you start out with a bunch of houses? Is that just because you wanted to get in there and fix something? You wanted to build something?
We originally joined Lifestyles, and we just wanted to learn how to buy 2 or 3 houses. We went to the 2-day seminar with David Fisher in San Antonio back in 2015, and I had to drag my wife kicking and screaming. She didn't want to give up a weekend with her kids. Our second son was born. He was maybe 7 or 8 months old, and she didn't want to give up a weekend with the kids to go learn about real estate.
She worked full-time for the people listening right now, and you work full-time. So
yeah,
that weekend time was very important.
Yeah, we were both working hard in sales, and the weekends was the only time we had with our family, really. And so about lunchtime, she had a paradigm shift, and she wanted to go all in, and I went, whoa, wait a second, pump the brakes a little bit. That's not what we came here to do. She wanted to go straight into apartment investing, and I said, And we ended up joining at the challenge level, and we bought the houses. And then we went back about a year and a half later, which a lot of members do just to get a refresher on what's going on. And a year and a half later, we ended up upgrading our membership to the preferred membership so that we could, go invest in apartment deals. And very quickly after that, did the training to do the LEED certification, and actually had a deal land in our lap shortly after we became certified to be able to do the lead deals in Lifestyles. So we just originally just went in to figure out how to buy a few houses because we figured we just wanted a little extra income. We didn't hate our jobs. We just wanted to be able to have a little something extra if we wanted to work less.
I read a book one time called the Think and Grow Rich, and the first paragraph of the book, first page or so, said, in every single page of this book, there is the secret to becoming successful. And the problem is you're not ready for all those secrets. Right. So you can read the book and you won't get it. And you need to read this book over and over and over again. So I read the book the first time. I highlighted everything with a highlighter, yellow highlighter. Then I came back and read it the second time, and what was interesting was everything that I had highlighted, I now had made it my own belief system. And I go, I don't even know why I highlighted that. It's so obvious. It's pitiful, right? Everybody knows that, right. Don't they?
Right.
But then I saw stuff that I didn't see the first time through, so I highlighted it a different color. Did that 4 times, had 4 different colors in the book, and every single time I had gotten closer. All I'm bringing this up is just what you said. You come back to that lifestyle seminar, and there's so much information coming at you so quickly in 2 days, you don't get some of the stuff. And you come back, and you're going, I know all this stuff. I got it. But then that 1 or 2 little nuggets come flowing out that you didn't get the first time. It's really powerful.
Or maybe you remember hearing it, and it didn't have the aha moment. You go, oh, yeah, I heard that, but it didn't strike you the same way. So
Exactly. Yeah.
You got to go back and get a refresher.
So let's talk about how you found Lifestyles, because I'm doing this interview backwards because you're being a builder. I had to hear your story about building, right? But let's turn it around and go backwards now. How did you hear about Lifestyles, and what brought you to us?
So David Fisher does the 2 days in Central and Central Texas, Dallas, and Houston, and he likes to call us, my wife Carla and I, he likes to call us his vegan CrossFit couple. We worked out at a CrossFit gym with a guy named Chris Jameson, and became friends with him and noticed that he was buying properties left and right. I think he did something like 30 houses in 36 months or something crazy like that. And I finally grabbed him and said, what are you doing? And he started saying things like LTV and hard money and all these phrases I hadn't heard before. And he said, I'll stop now. Go to this lifestyle. It was a case study night. Go to Lifestyles. They have a case study. Go through that. Sign up for the 2-day, and then after you go through the 2-day, then we can talk, because then you'll know what I'm talking about. And so through a friendship, that was how we learned about Lifestyles. He was hugely successful in single family properties. I think he bought an apartment too, and went on to become a lender as well. And he's got his own mortgage company now. But it was word of mouth, and then once you go, I can't imagine going to the 2-day and not, if you've got any fire to buy real estate and you go to the 2-day, I can't imagine you walking out of there without the skill set to be able to go do it, because it's so much information, that can send you on a path that maybe you didn't even imagine yourself on.
Yeah, it's interesting you said you weren't dissatisfied with your jobs, but you saw him making some money. And by the way, I know him very well. In fact, we had discussed at one time going into partnership in the mortgage business, but he had another guy he wanted to partner with. And I don't believe in three-way partnerships. I mean, you could get voted
I've heard
out.
Your philosophy on partnerships, yeah.
So I said, guys, go ahead on your own, do it. And they did it. And I think at the end they end up getting separated from each other because, again, the very thing that I told them, that when it comes down to having partners, they start making different decisions. It becomes difficult to remain partners. So, but I do like the guy, and he is very successful. He did a great job. So that was lucky to run into that, and you got into it and so forth. You're now at the point where I see that you're starting to think about your third deal.
Yeah.
Before we go into the third deal, let's talk about passive deals. Why did you elect to go ahead and do a bunch of passive deals too?
Well, and that goes back to we weren't completely dissatisfied with our jobs. We're good at what we do. We work in sales, both of us. And I mean, people always say we're born salespeople. And we enjoyed it and made a lot of money doing it. And the challenge was just, the amount of time that we were able to spend with our family. So we weren't yet ready to walk away from any of the corporate stuff. So, we upgraded to the preferred membership where we could invest in apartment deals. Very quickly got into 5 passive deals. It's just kind of an evolution. The single families was good, but it wasn't enough. The passive deals were good, but it still wasn't enough. And
you sound like an addict, man.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of what I referred to the Lifestyles realtors as my crack dealers, right? So anytime I wanted to buy a house, I'd text 2 or 3 of them, and they were all right there, ready to go with a deal. That's
hilarious. I've never heard anybody call a house a gateway drug.
Well, do a few houses, and you get into it, and it becomes addictive, especially when you're turning them around. But we got into the passive deals because, again, we weren't yet ready to pull the trigger on walking away from our jobs. And then, interesting thing, COVID happened. My whole family got sick with COVID, and my boss basically was like, "Why aren't you answering your phone? I know you're at home, but everybody's at home." And that was kind of a switch for me. I was sick. I got it bad. I never had to go to the hospital, but I was down for a few days, and the job didn't care. They didn't care. It just keep going. Wow. And so that for me was kind of the catalyst that was like, all right, well, this is where the shift happened. So that was a couple years ago. And
that's eye-opening, man. That really is. That's eye-opening. We've got 30 seconds left here. Kids, what ages, and are they starting to think about what you're doing? Are they starting to pay attention?
We try to involve them as much as we can. We've got a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old, and the last house we bought, we actually bought it in a handshake partnership with our kids, and we doubled their money. So, yeah, they're involved. They came out, they did demo. They come to the apartment complex. They help pick up trash. They're involved. They're there. And the expectation is that they will continue to grow with us as long as they want to.
Geoff, thank you for coming on the show today and sharing your story with us. I really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you at the Expo.
Now, from the files of Del Walmsley.
You can have anything you want in life, but you can't have everything you want in life. Meaning, if you wanted to be the best at something, you would have to give up your whole life to be the best at it. I remember a person telling me a story about a concert pianist who had just played the most unbelievable score ever at this open piano concert, right? And somebody came down to him and said, "Man, I would give my whole life to be able to play like that." And the concert pianist looked at him, just sort of grimaced and said, "I did." And that's the difference, my friends. What were you willing to give your life for? That's the difference. Be right back with the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Welcome back to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. If you want to contact me, it's askdel@luinc.com, which stands for Lifestyles Unlimited, Inc. So it's askdel@luinc.com, askdel@luinc.com. And we can get your questions answered for you. It's me answering your questions, no one else. I take my own emails and so forth. So if you got something, send it to me, and we'll see if we can get it. If it's good, we'll think about putting it on the radio as a question that we can answer. In March, our Real Estate Expo, which is the largest real estate expo in the country, probably in the world. Typically, we have anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 people there. COVID cut it down a little bit to around 4,000 last year, but we're looking forward to larger numbers this year. At that convention, we are going to have bus tours going on 2 days in a row where you can go out and see properties that have been done. They have been purchased and renovated and operated correctly, and you can learn more in one day of looking at, a few properties than you would in years of studying the stuff, just to see the real stuff in front of you. You can't really understand this unless you put your hands around it and you see it and you look at it. And you're going to be getting the story from the people that are actually doing the deals. We're also going to have other people get up and do educational classes for 3 days there. I'm going to be doing a talk at one of the classes at the main event. And it's going to be a lot of things for you to see. I mean, tremendous number of things. So you want to go to Lifestyles Unlimited 2022 Expo on the website and look it up and see what's going to be there, all the stuff that's available. With me here now is one of the people that are going to be sharing their story, and this is Michael Johnson. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dale. Thanks for having me.
Let me throw some numbers out here for these people, just to kind of whack them around a little bit. 68 complexes, 13,000 units. How does one human being do that?
It's just dedication. 10 years of following your map has allowed me to just continue to reinvest, what John Pry calls reinvest your seed corn. So as a deal refinances or sells, that splits into 2 or 3 more deals.
So what kind of a talk or what kind of a presentation are you going to be giving when we get to the expo?
So I've got 90 minutes. We'll be talking about my portfolio. I'm going to focus kind of on the early years, those first 5, 6 deals. And we'll be kind of showing how I got started, where the money came from, and then how it's gone from $400,000 to over $4 million in these 10 years.
Wow. Tenfold, thousands. That is unbelievable. It really is. I sit here and I watch it happen right in front of me, obviously, Michael. But even when you hear it and when you meet a person, how has that changed your life?
It's made. Well, I retired 4 years after starting this program, so I was 53. This has been 7 years ago. So ever since then, we've been traveling. We can go, pick up and go anytime we want. We built a brand new house. Got a lazy river in the backyard, trying to model myself after you, Del. Crazy cool going on.
Oh, we'll get into that at Expo. I'll tell you some news stories, crazy stuff. It does. Once you get out there and you're retired and you have more money than you're used to having, you start thinking, what am I going to do with myself? And crazy ideas come about. I just bought 2 Huskies, brand new, Valentine's Day gift for my wife. And it's like having babies. It's insane. Yeah. I've never seen anything that has so much energy as puppy Huskies. I had cats, I've had dogs, but I've never had baby puppy Huskies, and they are insane. So I hear you, man. You get yourself in trouble. Do you currently still have 60 investments in 68 different complexes?
No, we've got 14 of them have sold. So there's just over 50 are currently active, and this year I've already been told that 10 more are going to sell this year.
So that has to be some major coin for you when these things sell out, huh?
Yeah, it's huge. This first deal, buddy of yours, Jerry, that I invested in 10 years ago, we still own it. Put $80,000 into that deal, and it's cash flowed out $220,000. That includes the refi. The equity, though, it's got $750,000 in equity sitting there. So after when we sell it next year, that $80,000 is going to turn into $1 million. That's just one deal.
Now, on that deal, did you guys ever finish up the commercial portion of that building?
This is the first one.
This year in Casa. Okay.
This is City-Based Vista, 360 unit. This is not the Landmark.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, this one's a big one, wasn't it? Was that 360 units?
360 units. Yep. That's $17,000 a door is what he bought it at.
I remember Jerry telling me on this deal, because Jerry and I go round and round and round because he's smarter than I am. So we argue over everything.
Smarter than everybody.
And so he was telling me he only needed to be 70% occupied to hit his debt coverage ratio. Was that true?
That sounds about right, yeah. I mean, we bought it so cheap. I mean, you could have the thing half empty and it'd still be making cash flows.
Man, that is crazy. Okay, I got two more questions for you because we're going to be run out of time here real quick. Question number one. Through all your years of experience here, do you pick the jockey or the horse? Do you look at the deal or do you look at the lead as being more important?
That's a big slide on my presentation and kind of everything that I look at, but definitely I look at the jockey first. I need to know who they are. That doesn't mean that I won't invest in a deal if all my other parameters are met and I've gone out and met this new person, but typically it's, who's the lead is the first question I want answered.
Real quick question. You only have 30 seconds to answer it. And that is, would you have done anything differently?
Boy, no. We've been hitting on all cylinders for 10 years, thanks to you, Del, so I would not have done anything differently.
Excellent. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today and giving everybody a heads up of how great your conversation is going to be with them when they get to the Expo. And I really appreciate you taking the time to put together that presentation for the Expo because people can learn a lot. You've got a situation where you've went here and completed the package, $400,000 to $4 million, and still going. That's an incredible story. Thank you for coming on today. I appreciate it. The rest of you out there, keep this in mind. Michael, myself, and everybody that goes to lifestyles realizes one very important thing. It's not about how much money you have saved up. It's not about the money. It's about the lifestyle. And if you can't put it together like Michael has, where he doesn't have to get up and go to work every day to make that money, then you haven't hit the nail on the head. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.
The information and opinions you hear on the Del Walmsley radio show are those of the host, Del Walmsley, his guests, and his callers, and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this station, its affiliates, its management, or advertisers. The Del Walmsley show is for entertainment purposes only. Please consult a professional regarding your personal investment needs. Nothing presented on the Del Walmsley show constitutes an endorsement, recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any product or security.